Oh wow, I'm already behind a week in reviewing my previous training footage. Again, that's great. So, getting back to it. Started off this session with the usual AMRAP push-ups. In here, going over 30 reps on the first set at the beginning, and then my aim is just to go over 25 for the second one at the end of the session. Another kind of meta goal that I have when I'm performing these is also to do unbroken repetitions, see how far I can go before I start thinking about pacing myself and resting in between repetitions. So the first set, I'm aiming at about 25, and then I'm resting a couple of seconds in between each repetition, and every subsequent repetition takes more time because it is more challenging, mainly to keep my core in preventing my core from collapsing and my traps to shrug. I think that I have the strength in my chest, and if I give it a few seconds rest, that's not the big issue. The main issue is to maintain structural integrity while performing these repetitions. And because the push-ups are, after all, kind of a full body exercise, I see more of a tax on the body in terms of overall capacity to maintain the right positioning throughout the set. But it's really good fun, and it's a nice little extra thing that I can shoot for while I'm getting these. Now, this session was slightly different from the previous ones because I thought about swapping the front squats with the hip hinges and getting the front squats before. The reasoning behind that was that because I feel like the front squats are very taxing since I'm doing them for high repetitions, I felt like the fresher I was, maybe the best chance I had to possibly increasing the total amount rep count by at least one repetition. Actually, not at least, by exactly one repetition. I do not want to go too far week by week and then having to catch up by possibly stalling or having to back down in reps because I overdid it the week before or a couple of weeks before. So I ended up doing 10 reps in the first set and I shot 9 in the second one, which is more than I had done the previous time, which by the way was before I went away for a week or so. So I had not done the front squats for about 2 weeks. And I remember that the previous one, before going away, I was doing 10 reps in the first one and 8 in the second one. So I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get as many reps in, and that was mainly the reason why I decided to get the front squats in before, kind of manipulating the exercise order in a way that allowed me to get the best chance at getting an extra rep with a couple of weeks in between the previous time and this time here. Happy to be able to report that it was done, and I might actually be staying in this organization of exercises as the time goes by, because I've always thought that the harder exercise, in the sense that the heavier exercise should always go first, and that is not necessarily incorrect. Maybe it was my understanding of what hardest was that was incomplete. I always felt like that the load always takes precedence on everything else, without considering that because I have a high load on the hinges and therefore I have a lower rep range, it is difficult, but the difficulty resides mainly in the load moved. And there is a component at the cardiovascular level that high reps front squats or high reps, any heavy movement really, is going to trump in terms of difficulty from a more holistic viewpoint. What I mean is that if I focus on an exercise for a lower rep range and high intensity, high load on the bar, then it is difficult, but it doesn't make me want to quit 3/4 of the way in. I enjoy low reps because I know that I can give it all that I have, but it doesn't last long. The front squats at these rep ranges, which with a weight that to me is sort of difficult, I have a slight feeling of dread when I'm approaching the bar. It is a feeling that is slightly uncomfortable, but I do like it, and it makes the exercise, and it is why the reason why I decided to put it before, because I thought that organizing the exercises in this way was not going to betray the fact that there is an easier exercise before a more difficult exercise. In my mind, the front squats, even though the load is much lower than the hip hinges, are the more difficult exercise in the way that I envision this thing. So I was doing the front squats. I was getting a good chunk of time in between sets. I think it was 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, and I managed to get 9 in the second one. The next time that I do this, I will shoot for 10 and 10, and if I get that, I will be going up in weight just by a measly 2.5 kilos, and go back down in the at the beginning of the rep range, which I think is going to be 6, and slowly make my way back up towards 2 sets of 10 before moving again up. This was the end of the session, and at this point, I think it was giving me a better sensation doing the hip hinges and the tricep work after the squats, because when I was doing the squats before the hip hinges and then moving on to the AMRAP push-up set at the end of the session, I was detonated at the end. But this way, I still managed to get good heavy work for the triceps, so that probably fatigued me in that portion of the musculature that is responsible for moving on push-ups. But the chest was feeling fresh, and cardiovascularly speaking, I was ready to get it done. It was a good session, but now the other thing that I need to get done is finally catch up with all of these backlog of videos. Ciao.